Shop the Sherwin-Williams Super Sale and get 40% off paints and stains August 8th through the 14th. With prices starting at $29.39, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Hey Ghoul friends, it's me, Adrian, or Ayden. Either way, I am still your host, and you are still listening to Susto, the podcast of paranormal folklore from Latin American cultures. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Not only can you be listening, but if you are a best ghoul friend on Patreon, then you are possibly watching. And if this is your first time, welcome to the pod. Welcome to the circle of trust. It is better that you enter this sisterhood with trust in your heart. Or no, what's the craft quote? I butchered it, but you know what I mean. It is better that you fall on this blade. Perfect love, perfect trust. You're here. Thank you. And I am also back really quick before anything else. A big shout out and a big thank you once again to Lainey Hobbs from It's Haunted What Now and True Crime Cases with Lainey for dropping into the feed last episode so that I could kind of recuperate from my quick vacation, more like my sabbatical to go see Mother Monster. As you can see, I'm wearing the shirt that I made for the concert if you're watching the video. Speaking of the shirt that I made, the video, I actually made like a vlog out of it or just like a quick video. I don't know. I'm putting stuff up on YouTube. So if you haven't seen, go check that out. It's youtube.com/@Susto Podcast. The last video that I uploaded, major shout out and thank you to Nicole and Damien from Parapeculiar, the podcast, for having Jeff and I over for a Ouija board session / paranormal investigation. I did a vlog on that and it was a really great experience. So make sure that you go check it out. Also, thank you to Maud and Ray for joining us that night. It was a lot of fun. It was a great experience. But yeah, you can watch the vlog if you want to hear all about that and see some clips and hear from Nicole in there as well. Again, that's youtube.com/@Susto Podcast. But anyway, some quick updates before we jump into today's episode. One more thank you to those of you who attended the Susto Spell Book Club meeting. We held that on the 2nd, a couple of days ago. That was a Saturday. Yeah, it was so fun. I hadn't done a book club in a long time. The last time I did a book club was actually myself, Jeff, and one of my best friends, April. We all got together and we created and hosted this book club, and it was called Brunch, the Queer Comic Book Club. And we would meet at different spots in the valley and have brunch at these restaurants and talk about the comic book that we read. They were always centered around like queer stories. That was a lot of fun. So this was, it was really cool to get into this, but this is very different because it was over Zoom. So different for me. And I got some positive feedback, but as always, I'm like, how can I do this better? What can I change? What can I improve on? So anyway, just thank you for those of you who attended and participated in the conversation. It was a lot of fun. For the month of August, we have the book that we are reading. It is The Witches of El Paso by Luis Jaramillo. If you're just hearing about it now, I know it's a couple days after the month has started, but it's not an extremely long book. It's like, I think like 200 something pages. So listen, if I could read Buffalo Hunter Hunter, which was like 400 pages in a month, we can get this one done. So I'm excited about this book. I've heard lots of good things about it for quite a while, and it's been on my list for a while, but hey, it's part of the book club now, so I'm excited to finally get to reading it. I've already started. It's really fun. And if you haven't heard about the book club, if you haven't seen the social media posts, that's @Susto Podcast on every platform. I've been updating about it. If you would like to join the book club, it is open to any and everybody. So you do not have to be a patron. You don't have to sign up for anything. All you have to do is just, I guess, basically follow on social media so that you know what the updates are, you know what we're reading. And then at the end of the month, we will have a discussion, but I will, of course, post the meeting details. So the date, the time, and the meeting link. And that's about it. But if you are interested in some extra perks or participating a little bit more, what's the word, intentionally or in depth, I don't know, you can sign up for Patreon, and the middle and higher tiers. Those patrons have access to voting on what we read. So the book, The Witches of El Paso, patrons voted that we were going to read that one this month. And you also have access to the Discord channel for the book club, where we can talk about the reading throughout the month. Of course, it's not necessary. You can wait until the final discussion, but it's fun to kind of check in and say, what page are you on? Oh my God, I just got to this really sad part, or I can't believe this is happening. We try and keep it spoiler free, but it's a fun kind of little extra thing to be a part of. If you're interested, again, totally not necessary. The book club is open to any and everybody. Just make sure to follow Susto Podcast on all social media platforms for updates about the book club. And the last update I will give is I have some events lined up already for October, the 10th, the 11th, and the 31st. Just keep an eye out on social media. I'll be posting more details about those, but I think so far it is going to be an event at Haunt Happy Books in Lockhart, one of my favorite places in this world, an event at the Austin Public Library for another live storytelling, and an event on Halloween night, the 31st, hosted by Night Owl Podcast. So, of course, I will post flyers and calendar updates and everything on social media. And if you are hosting an event, if you know someone who's hosting an event and they need entertainment, storytelling, a panelist, a workshop, a moderator, hit me up. I am your ghoul. Send me an email, send me a DM, leave it in a comment somewhere. Or if you see an event that you think that I would be interested in participating in, please send me the details, tag me in it, whatever it is. Let's get those connections going. Let's fill up the rest of October. And I will say, if you are an organizer, I would say jump in now, try and lock down a date with me, because unfortunately there were people that I wanted to work with last year that I wasn't able to because spooky season gets really busy. And thankfully so. Please reach out and let me know if you'd like to work with me for spooky season. We're about to jump into the story. As always, if you have your own story that you would like to share on a Letters from the Beyond episode, you can do so by visiting my website, sustopodcast.com, or my link tree, that's linktr.ee/susto, and hitting that submit a story, tell me a story button. And if you have any sort of photo, video, audio recording that you think goes along with it or qualifies, of course, please send that in and I will post it either on the episode or on social media. And if you would like to support the show, you already know that the easiest way to do so is by leaving positive ratings and reviews, and I greatly appreciate it. And as always, share the show with your ghoul friends. Let them know what you're into, how much of a creepy little weirdo you are for listening to this stuff. But not really. We're not really the weirdos. You know, we're just having a good spooky time over here. Okay, now with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode, which is the story of The Haunted Painting and the Ghost of Clara García de Zúñiga. They brought Martín on as an intern, an art student from the university, eager to learn the quiet craft of art preservation. The night hours suited him. While the city hummed with distant engines and flickering screens, he worked in the archives of the Juan Manuel Blanes Museum. The villa-turned-museum, perched at the edge of Prado Park in Montevideo, seemed to exist in a separate world. A world steeped in frescoes, acrylic, and silence. It was a beautiful old building, a 19th century estate draped in ivy and wrapped in memory. The stone walls held the heat of summer days and exhaled it slowly through the night. The floors were soft gray marble, whispering underfoot. High ceilings floated above him like painted clouds, and chandeliers cast puddles of amber light on the walls. During his first week, Martín assisted with cycling artwork into and out of the archives. Paintings rotated regularly through the public exhibitions, and it was his job to help store those not currently on display. He gently wrapped canvases in breathable cloth, labeled crates, and noted condition reports. As he worked, he found it hard not to reflect on how easily art and the lives behind it could be tucked away, out of sight, and forgotten. Martín spent his nights gently cataloging old frames, brushing dust from derelict watercolors, examining the aging of oils. There was a sacred stillness in the work. He liked it, the way the house slept around him. But in his second week, things began to shift. It started with the cold. He had just finished shelving a folio of sketches in the north corridor, the one lined with pastoral scenes and gauchos on horseback, when he felt it. A sharp chill, sudden and unnatural, like walking into the shadow of something that wasn't there. The windows were closed. The air should have been warm, but the cold slid through his sleeves like fingers. Later that night, he heard music. 3 soft piano notes, then silence, then 4 more. The museum's piano sat in the music room, an antique baby grand, well-maintained, but never played. Martín stepped into the hallway. The music faded. He entered the room, and it was empty. The lid was closed, a fine layer of dust covering the keys. No footprints, no drafts. He told himself it was nothing, just the acoustics of an old building. The next night, while taking a break in the rear gardens, he glanced up. There, in the window above, stood a figure. A pale dress, a silhouette framed in moonlight, still as a painting. He blinked, and the figure was gone. He rushed inside, up the narrow staircase, his footsteps reverberating off of all the marble and stone. At the end of the upper gallery, he paused. A portrait hung on the far wall, a young girl. The painting showed only her upper half, delicate shoulders in a pink dress trimmed with lace. Her black curly hair was pinned neatly behind her head. Her face was uncanny, not for any flaw in the technique, but because of how many emotions it held. Sadness, defiance, a flicker of knowing. Her eyes, dark and wide, watched him. They followed him, no matter where he stood in the room. The next morning, Martín hesitated. Then, during a casual conversation with his supervisor, he asked, "Has anyone ever noticed strange things in the museum?" The older man paused, as though weighing his words. "You seen her yet?" Martín didn't answer. His supervisor told him the story, the one every long-time employee heard, but never printed in a brochure. Her name was Clara García de Zúñiga. She lived in the museum before it ever housed art. The daughter of wealthy landowners born in 1845, Clara was a spirited child with a mind too quick and a tongue too sharp for her time. She read voraciously, wrote with fierce conviction, and questioned everything, especially the roles society laid out for women. Her rebelliousness alarmed her parents. She rejected suitors, argued philosophy with her tutors, and roamed Montevideo without a chaperone. At 14, in a desperate attempt to contain her, her parents married her off to José María Zuviría, a 36-year-old notary. She bore him 3 children, but the marriage was a cage. Clara ultimately separated from him, a scandal almost without precedent in her social circles. She later entered a relationship with the writer and lawyer Ernesto de las Carreras and bore 5 more children. She published essays that criticized patriarchal laws and hypocrisies. She wore what she liked, spoke her mind, and walked where she pleased. Eventually, her own relatives brought legal action against her. In 1885, they had her declared mentally unfit to manage her life and estate. However, it was not madness that concerned them. It was her independence. In court, Clara spoke eloquently in her defense, but the judge dismissed her testimony. Control of her property and legacy passed to her male relatives, including her estranged husband, José. They confined her to the attic of the family home. That attic would be where she lived out the rest of her days. She died up there, not from illness, but from isolation. The curator overheard the story being retold and interrupted with a frown. "Let's not indulge in ghost stories, it's bad for the museum's reputation." That afternoon, the portrait was quietly taken down. It was stored away in the archives. Later that night, now alone, Martín returned to his work. The atmosphere of his working space felt abnormal. The archives, usually peaceful, were heavy with a quiet pressure. At midnight, he heard the creaking of hinges, then the slam of a door, then footsteps on the cold tile. He searched the corridors. In the portrait gallery, several paintings were no longer on the walls. Some lay gently against chairs, some upside down. One rested face down on the floor, but unharmed. Then, Martín heard crying. Soft, steady, a woman's sorrow baked in the walls. He followed it back upstairs, into the room where Clara's portrait was taken down this afternoon. The crying stopped. The painting was back. Hung askew but unmistakably there, the girl in the pink dress, the dark curls pinned up, the quiet storm in her eyes. Martín stepped closer, and then he felt something, a pressure against his chest, not pain but firm, as if invisible hands pressed into him, not to harm, but to move him, back and away. He took a step back, and the pressure faded. He stared into Clara's eyes. He understood. She didn't want to be shelved away or pushed around. She didn't want her story archived. She had spent a life resisting control of her body, her words, her fate. She would not allow it in death. She wouldn't let another man box her into silence, even delicately, beneath layers of bubble wrap and canvas sheets. Martín left the museum before dawn. He never returned. But sometimes, in the high rooms of the villa late at night, the air grows cold, the piano plays, and paintings come to life. Welcome back, Wolf friends. Thank you so much for listening to that story. We're going to go ahead and jump into the sources. This painting and this museum, it's a real painting. It's a real place. I even went on Google Maps and I did the street view. You can do, I don't know, maybe they do this for all museums. I didn't know this, but you can do a street view or like an in-person view of museums. So I did like a walkthrough of this museum last night. The painting is there. She's up right now. I will say I saw it and I was so excited, and then I was like, oh, I'm a little scared, but it's a picture of a painting. I'm fine. So again, this is the portrait of Clara García de Zúñiga. And this first source that we have here is from the website. It's the blanes.montevideo.gub.uy. And this is a post about her. Also, I probably should have done my due diligence, and I can do it now, but I've already recorded the story. So I'm not sure if it is Blanes or Blanes, Blanes, but I'm going to go with Blanes because why not, for the culture. But this first source, it says Blanes or Blanes began painting at a very young age, and his earliest works included landscapes and portraits. Before establishing himself as a professional artist, he painted numerous portraits of Montevideo's high society members who hired him to represent them. At that time, owning portraits was a way to distinguish oneself in society. Also, before I forget, I don't think I've said it yet. So this story, of course, takes place in Montevideo, Uruguay. And immediately, that first paragraph, it makes me think of these kids and their damn phones. When people criticize others for like being obsessed with their image or like constantly taking selfies or videos of each other. I wonder how much of that is influenced by or translated from this kind of old idea that like owning a portrait of yourself, it distinguishes yourself. So like, you have to take these pictures of yourself. Sorry, I was just listening to an episode of The Cutting Room Floor, which is one of my favorite podcasts ever. It is so good. I just started listening recently. There's a bunch of clips on TikTok, so if you want to look it up, it's the Cutting Room Floor. I would highly suggest checking it out there because she's on Patreon only. So and hey, I get it, because I feel like when I listen to her, I get smarter. I get I get such good takes from her. Anyway, so the last episode that I just listened to is I forgot this person's name. I'm so sorry. Not that either of them are listening, but she had on this like fashion industry photographer. And I think like just a photojournalist in general, not even specific to the fashion industry, but they were talking about photography and photographs, especially in like photographing people. And I don't know, the way that they were talking about it, I was like, wow, this all makes complete sense. And it's obviously photography is its own thing that gets studied, right? It's art, it's journalism. I don't know. I'm going on a tangent here. Anyway, all that to say, I'm still that episode is fresh in my mind thinking about this and the idea of portraiture and what that means and like what it signifies to other people. But anyway, this continues. The portrait dates from this early period of Blanes's career. It was painted around 1855 when Clara García de Zúñiga was about 10 years old and the painter was 25. Again, her family was wealthy. They were landowners, so they commissioned this painter to do her portrait. It says, the painting was commissioned, of course, by the García de Zúñiga family. The treatment of Clara's portrait displays pictorial characteristics from a period prior to Blaine's academic training in Florence, Italy. So he was a formally trained painter, but this painting specifically of Clara, it's more representative of his work before his training. I'm not sure. I didn't see anything about when he got that training. So I'm like, is it that he did the painting before he did his academic training in Italy? Or is it after and he intentionally chose to do it in this style? I'm not sure what that has to do with the haunting, but we'll see. This says, Clara García de Zúñiga was the heiress to a considerable fortune, and between 1872 and 1892, she was the owner of the country house that is now the Blanes Museum. So it's interesting that her family commissioned this artist. She, was from a wealthy family. She was rich. She ended up inheriting this house and the fortune, and then the house became the museum named after the artist that did her portrait. Why wouldn't it be named after her or her family? I don't know. Interesting. This says she married by arrangement from her parents. So her parents, of course, as mentioned in the story, arranged her marriage. The 36-year-old notary Zuviria at the age of 14. Gross, obviously. I was about to say by today's standards, but I feel like by any standards, but obviously the mindset was very different then. So, but now it's like, oh, that's icky. But this says, from this marriage, she had 3 children. So 3 children with Zuviria, this man who her parents arranged the marriage with. And after separating from him, she enjoyed a very liberal love life, is what it says here, by the moral standards of the time. So she was probably like showing ankle and wrist and being like, yoo-hoo, blink, 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 wink, wink, wink. And everybody was like, how dare she, whore. But sorry. But this continues. She had 5 children with Alberto Garcia Lagos and her son, who is the writer and they say dandy, Roberto de las Carreras, with Ernesto de las Carreras. So she had 5 children, one of them of whom was a son who went on to be a notable writer. But all those 5 kids, including the son that they pointed out here for whatever reason, she had them with Ernesto de las Carreras, who allegedly was her lawyer, I think. But this says, in 1885, a medical and legal tribunal accused her of suffering from mental disorders, which prevented her from further disposing of her property. This is in 1885. She was 10 years old in 1855. So 1855 to 1885, that's 30 years. She was about 40 years when this happened. So she was young and they were like, done, you're over. This finishes up here by saying, one of the achievements of this portrait by Blanes is that the eyes look straight ahead, as in many paintings. These gazes appear to follow us thanks to an optical illusion. So I've definitely seen these paintings everywhere. I feel like they've taken it up a notch now. And you go to like Spirit Halloween or any store during spooky season, and it's kind of like a shadow box effect where there's a layer with just the eyes painted, and then there's a layer in front of that with the rest of the painting, so that when you move, it looks like the eyes are actually physically moving. But a really cool optical illusion, essentially. It says, the effect is achieved by creating a forward-facing vanishing point and painting the pupils in the center of the iris. The image is static, but the brain detects this effect and creates an optical illusion as if it were the movement of the portrait's eyes. The same thing happens in photography and film when the subject or actor looks at the camera. Since the eyes in the portrait are painted looking straight ahead with a forward-facing vanishing point, the illusion is created that the gaze, quote, of the painting always meets the observer's gaze, no matter where they are. Nothing could be further from the presence of Clara's soul or her ghost. So essentially this is saying it's just an optical illusion. The painting is not haunted. This also makes me think of, what do they call it in movies? Like the Kubrick stare, I think very famously, like in The Shining, when it's like the head tilted down, the eyes up, it's supposed to look like really creepy. That kind of like effect creates, I think, a sort of feeling in people when they see it that makes them a little uneasy. The next source we have here is from occult-world.com, and this is about the Blanes Museum in Montevideo. This says, the haunted mystique of Blanes Museum and the painting of Clarita. Nestled in Montevideo, Uruguay, the Blanes Museum, located on Juan Manuel Blanes Street. So it's on that street. Maybe that's why the museum is named after him, is because it's on the street named after him. I still think it should be named after her and her family. I don't know. I wonder how the people in Uruguay feel about that, or in Montevideo feel about that. This says, the museum is a destination that marries art and the uncanny, known for its rich cultural history and extensive collection of artwork. The museum also bears a reputation for being one of the most haunted places in the city. Central to its supernatural lore is the enigmatic painting of Clarita, a masterpiece that has captivated and unsettled visitors for decades. Legends surrounding Clarita, combined with mysterious phenomena reported within the museum's halls, have cemented its place as a nexus of art and the paranormal. As always, though, I feel like with something like this, it's a piece of history. It is a very old painting. It has a lot of history behind it. It has a lot of lore behind it. And so that's just generally kind of the belief around here on Susto, right? Is that when there is history with something, when something is old, it's collected more energy than something that is newer, right? Especially with her story, which is terrible. It's like she was an outspoken woman. She said, no, I don't want to be trapped in this marriage that I didn't agree to when I was a child with this person. That there was talks in some of these articles as well about abuse. So she didn't want to be with this person. She just wanted to live her life. And even to this day, someone like this would be frowned upon. Women are to be seen and not heard, and to be subservient and traditional and only in the home. And if that is what specific women want, or what specific people want, that is up to them as individuals. It should not be an idea that is placed on an entire gender, right? I know you get it. Anyway, this continues. At the heart of the museum's haunted reputation is the famous painting of Clarita. The portrait, an exquisite example of 19th century realism, depicts a young girl whose delicate yet haunting gaze seems to pierce through time. Legend has it that the painting's eyes follow visitors as they move around the room, creating an eerie sense of being watched. This phenomenon, though often dismissed as a trick of perspective, has left many uneasy, with some claiming to feel a deeper, almost sentient presence emanating from the artwork. You see, that is one thing. It's one thing to see something and be like, oh, that it looks creepy, it's doing a weird thing, versus to be like, that looks creepy and it feels creepy. I don't know if that makes sense, because I definitely see the difference. I've seen things that are like, oh, that's a little weird, or that's a cool kind of like illusion or effect that it's doing. And then to see something else and be like, no, this is giving me a feeling. It reminds me of when I went to Nicole and Damien's house to record an episode for Parapeculiar, which if you haven't listened, go check it out. They showed me this painting, and I think I talked about it already, either on TikTok or on YouTube somewhere, or on here. But they showed me this painting that was given to them by someone because this person didn't want it anymore. When they first showed it to me, I was like, oh, this is an interesting painting. And I looking into the eyes of it, because it was a portrait of a person, I physically stepped back when they kind of unrolled it and showed me, because I felt uneasy. It gave me a feeling, and I was like, oh, I don't like this. But that could have been any of the other probably hundreds of haunted items in their museum that was doing that to me. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking of reading this now. This continues. Clarita's story adds another layer of mystery. According to local lore, the girl depicted in the painting met an untimely and tragic end, leading to speculations that her spirit lingers within the museum. The painting, some say, acts as a vessel for her restless soul, creating a link between the physical world and the supernatural, which, again, that's another one of the, what do we call them? We need to have a name for these things, like the Susto tenets, or the Susto commandments, or the rules of Susto. If it was traumatic, it's haunted. I don't know, but her story was traumatic, and it was really sad, and there's a lot of energy behind the way that she passed, tragically, kind of forced to remain isolated and away from living her life. She was such a free spirit. That's what I see when I read about her. She was a free spirit, and she was truly just caged and trapped. So maybe, there is a link to this painting of, in her girlhood, she probably had more freedom, because she was oh, she's a kid, whatever, yeah, we don't want her to behave like that, but she's a child. There's some wiggle room, some leniency, right? But then when she was 14, that's kind of when things went downhill. They married her off, and she spent the rest of her life after 14 fighting. So maybe there is this link to this representation of her, because she was 10 when this portrait was painted. So she's maybe seeing this and remembering like and honestly for all of us, hey, what a great time it was to be 10 years old when we weren't paying bills or having responsibilities or dealing with this government. Ugh. Anyway, sorry. This continues to talk about some paranormal activity in the museum. And it says, the Blanes Museum has become a hotspot for paranormal enthusiasts. Susto field trip. Are we ready? It says, many of whom report unexplainable occurrences, particularly when the painting of Clarita is moved. So that is something that we included in the story. And by the way, round of applause to Jeffrey Doyle. If you liked it, give it a big old thumbs up, comment, 5 stars, whatever you'd like. And this continues, staff and visitors alike have described an unsettling energy in the museum during such times. So whenever they're moving the painting around, they're like, that's when she pops off. With reports of cold spots, flickering lights, and even the sound of faint whispers echoing through the halls. I feel like a museum is a really good space to haunt, right? I never really have thought about like haunted museums. Art, natural history, science museums, I think purely for the acoustics. The museum is a great space to haunt. This says, some staff members recount objects inexplicably shifting positions or falling without any apparent cause. Others have reported shadowy figures darting across the room or seen fleeting reflections of a girl in mirrors or glass cases near the painting. So she's hanging around there. The most striking stories involve feelings of being touched or pushed when standing too close to Clarita's painting, as though an unseen force is warning people to keep their distance. Which also, those are just the rules of any museum. Don't touch the paintings, please. That little wire at the bottom. Okay, I have a story for y'all. One time, I went to was it the MoMA or the Met? No, it was the Met, the Metropolitan Museum in New York. I went when I was like 21 for my birthday. Shout out Netta-san Richard for helping me get over there for my birthday, for taking me. We went to the Met Museum, and it was my first time in New York. And I didn't know what a New York block was, So I was tired because I'm from the Valley where we live in pockets of communities. It's not really walkable. And even then, like a New York block is very different from whatever. So we were at the Met Museum and I was like tired. It was a long day. And we went into this room, and it was this huge room. And like in the center of it, there were these Egyptian artifacts. And things were like, they had little wire, they were in cases, and I was like, oh, like so cool, whatever. But I was exhausted. So we walked in, and this whole room was not, I don't want to say Egyptian themed. I feel like that kind of doesn't put enough, it's not a theme. It was very immersive is what I'll say. Everything looked like it was like the carvings on the walls and this and that. So I go, and I'm leaning against the wall where there is no sign, there is no wire, nothing. I thought, in my 20-year-old mind, I was like, oh, it's decoration. They like decked out the walls to like make it look, cool, whatever. So I'm exhausted. So I'm just like leaning against this wall, kind of looking at everything. And then I start hearing, sir. And finally I turn around and I was like they're talking to me and they're like, sir, please get off of the artwork. Please get off of the artifacts. Huh? What? I was like, oh, oops, sorry. Like immediately got up. I didn't know. There was no wire, no sign, nothing. I was like, oh, it's just a wall. Like they made it look Egyptian to fit all of the exhibits in here. And apparently there's signs up in that room now. So sorry, everybody at the Met, but you had to put a sign up because of my tired ass. So this continues. Visitors who linger near the painting often describe a sense of being scrutinized, as if the girl in the portrait is aware of their presence. I thought this was an interesting choice of words. This is a translated from Spanish to English page. So I'm wondering about the word scrutinized. Is it directly translated? Does it mean something else? I'm like, is she out here judging us while we're watching her painting? I mean, hey, go for it, girl. If I was a ghost, I'd probably be making stank face all the time at people. I have a hard time not doing it now. But anyway, it says, as if the girl in the portrait is aware of their presence. On rare occasions, individuals have claimed to see the girl's expression change, with subtle shifts in her smile or the glint in her eyes, adding to the painting's mystique. Which is interesting because it's a painting, right? So I feel like the reflection in the eyes, it shouldn't move. That's painted on. But people are saying that they see the glint in the eyes shift, or she's got a little smirk, or her face changes. She's trying not to laugh at people. Creepy. We're getting close to the end of this one. It talks about cultural and historical significance of the museum. And it says, beyond its haunted reputation, the Blanes Museum is a cornerstone of Montevideo's cultural heritage, named after the renowned Uruguayan painter Juan Manuel Blanes. again, I guess, I don't know. I guess he just turned out to, like it said, he's renowned, and they were like, he's so important. Let's give him this museum. But I wonder, like, I don't know. I'm just very curious about what the process was for it to be that house specifically. I'm unable to let go of that thread for whatever reason. But this continues. It houses some of the country's most important artistic works, attracting visitors from all over the world. However, the painting of Clarita has given the museum an additional layer of notoriety, making it a must-visit for those intrigued by the supernatural. Well, I want to visit it. I must visit it. Okay, I need spooky sugar daddies. If you're out there, please hit me up and send me on send me and Jeff. There's two of us, okay? Send me and Jeff on this spooky world tour to visit all of these places. We need a Susto field trip. This continues. The blending of art and paranormal intrigue has turned the museum into more than a cultural institution. It is a living legend. Local legends and ghost stories draw in visitors who might otherwise overlook such historical sites. This dual identity as both a cultural hub and as a haunted site adds to the museum's charm, making it a unique attraction. I feel like Susto and this go hand in hand. We talk about history and culture, but we also talk about the paranormal and the scary stuff. So I feel like we need a Susto museum, or put me in an exhibit. So I don't know. This is just me having a big head about it, inflating my own ego. But I don't know. Hey, more manifesting. This finishes up here. It wraps up with explanations and speculations, and it says the museum's haunted reputation has sparked both skepticism and belief. Rational explanations for the painting's alleged phenomena often center on psychological factors, such as the power of suggestion, optical illusions, or the eerie atmosphere created by the dimly lit museum and its historical artifacts. What did I say earlier? Museums seem like prime haunting spaces. I feel like I don't hear enough, and that might be just a me issue, about haunted museums or museums being haunted. This continues. Still, these stories do little to explain the consistent reports of unexplained noises, temperature fluctuations, and shadowy apparitions, which also I feel like museums are typically already cold, right? The air itself, the temperature, like they're cold. So I feel like it would be harder to get a cold spot. You'd be like, whoa, where'd that come from, right? I don't know. The museums I've been in, they're usually cold. But this finishes up here. Believers argue that Clarita's spirit, if truly tied to the painting, might be expressing a need for acknowledgement or resolution. They suggest that her tragic story and the intense emotion captured in the portrait create an energy that lingers within the museum. That's what I said, affecting those who come into contact with it. I really want to go to this museum. Spooky sugar daddies, please get me a plane ticket. I want to go here. And I want to talk to her painting and be like, hey girl, your story is out there. People are listening to it. The ghoul friends over at Susto, we've got your back. Your parents are shitty for doing that to you. Your husband Jose was a weirdo. Clarita's my girl. She's not sorry, actually. She is going for sure in the, even though she's not a cryptid, she's a spirit, but she's going under that cryptid femmes file of these ghosts that I adore. So the next source, I'm not going to read too much about it. I do just want to kind of plug it because it looks so cute, and I need to find this so I can buy it. This is just titled Ghostly Friendship, The Ghost of Blanes Museum by Lau Moraiti. And this is about a book. It's a kid's book about the ghost of the Blanes Museum. It's just kind of talking about the book, and there's a little sad at one point. It's a cute, spooky kids book, and you know how I feel about those. I'm gonna, of course, put a picture up here for the video because the cover is adorable, and it shows the piano and a man singing or playing the piano with this ghostly woman that I'm assuming is Clarita. And yes, and there's a little, I'll put the picture up here too so you can see it, but there's a page that shows him talking either to or in front of this painting, which looks like it's like the cartoon version or like a kid's drawing version of the portrait. Yeah, I'm definitely going to buy this for sure because it's adorable. And I love spooky kids books. I don't know why. I think it's so sweet. The next source that we have here is from paseoporinter.net. It's I want to say this is a blog written by Andrea Kropman is what I'm picking up from looking at this. There's a title here. I think it says Socio-Digital Researcher in Communication and Anthropology. And this says Clara García de Zúñiga, the woman hidden behind a painting. And it says, this painting of a girl with a combative gaze. I love that. A combative gaze. that's a good way to put it for sure, is located in the Quinta de Rafo in the Prado neighborhood of Montevideo. Today, it is housed in the Juan Manuel Blanes Museum of Fine Arts. Of course, it talks about who he was, and again, that she owned the estate from 1872 to 1885. Both painter and subject went down in history in different ways. Absolutely they did. It seems like he became revered and like uplifted and people loved him. Whereas her, she was just constantly shocking people because she was simply living her life, right? It says also here that their destinies crossed on several occasions. That he painted her, this one says he painted her when she was 6 years old, and the other source says 10. So we'll just say somewhere between the ages of 6 and 10 is when this was painted. It was one of the first academic portraits that he created before training in his discipline in Italy. Okay, so that answers our question from earlier, that this painting was done before his formal training. Yep, this says she was born on April 15th, 1845. This also says that she spent her childhood in Argentina and then her family moved to Uruguay at the age of 9 due to political differences between her father and the governor of Entre Rios, which is where they lived, I believe, was Entre Rios, Argentina. For Clara, in addition to experiencing the stress of moving, her parents, since she was a, quote, very free-spirited girl, decided to marry her off when she was 14, as we read already. So I'll read here. I'm going to probably say some things that I said before, but it goes into that. It covers the abuse that we mentioned earlier. And it says, time passed and the moment arrived. Nothing changed her father and mother's minds. Clara married Jose Maria Zubiria, 36, an aristocrat from the Rio de la Plata region at 14. It worked out, as most such arrangements do. I mean, but did it really? Who did it work out for? Despite this, she continued to rebel against the macho culture based on the Victorian tendencies of the time. In Montevideo, at that time, upper-class women could only inhabit 2 spaces, the home or the church. For Clarita, neither were comfortable, peaceful, or violence-free spaces, so she inhabited the spaces she wanted, going against the tide of prejudice and the increasing abuse. I will think it's very interesting. I'm not sure how intentional this was, but it comes off as very intentional, is they said, as mentioned, the only places for a woman at that time were the home or the church, and neither of those were comfortable, peaceful, or violence-free spaces, which I think is something that people shy away from too much, is that the church is not a violence-free space, period. I'm just going to end that there before you know how I can get. This says, Jose Maria Zubiria, her husband, abused Clarita for a long time, almost all of her adolescence from the moment they married. In the early years of their marriage, they had 2 daughters and a son. Who knows how much harassment and severe abuse she must have endured that she ran away with her children. She settled in the Villa de las Duranas, which is now the Blanes Museum, her family's summer retreat. For a long time, she felt free. So she separated from her husband, the abusive Jose Maria Zubiria, and she fled to what was her family's home, which is now the museum, right? It says, for a long time, she felt free. She began to enjoy her outings to cafes and social gatherings, decided how she wanted to raise her children, enjoyed her body, and maintained social and romantic relationships with whomever she pleased. However, she also began to be harassed by her husband, the moral institutions, and the criticism of high society, to which she belonged by birth. During this period, Clara had lovers and more children. One of the most famous lovers with whom she lived for a time was Ernesto de las Carreras, which we talked about him earlier. The result of this relationship was a son. This said that she had 5. Okay, so then I wonder now, maybe if I misinterpreted that earlier, it said that she had 5 children. I thought that she had 5 children with Ernesto, but I'm thinking maybe they were not all from Ernesto, but notably, she had one son with Ernesto, and then the other 4 children from I don't know who. But anyway, this continues. The result of this relationship was a son, the celebrated writer Roberto de las Carreras. Despite everything, her life was a nightmare. Her husband filed countless legal disputes against her. So again, Jose, because they were separated but maybe not legally divorced yet. So he filed countless legal disputes against her. Later, she was stripped of her childcare rights. So she had her custody taken away, and she was accused of being immoral and dishonest for wearing brightly colored dresses with low necklines and wearing her hair loose. Literally what I said earlier. She showed an ankle, she showed a wrist, and they were like, that's it. This woman is a monster. It continues which is ridiculous, but this continues, having obtained a court ruling in her favor, obtaining a divorce, her ex-husband continued to plot strategies to continue his harassment. So even after he took her children away and he gained full custody of the kids and probably smearing her name all over town, we can only assume. And even after the divorce, he was like, that's not enough. I'm going to continue to harass her. Finally, the sexist society, her husband, the clergy, and even her family declared her insane. They built a loft in Villa Duranas and imprisoned her there for many years until her death. The truth is that, after this ruse, those who declared her insane remained the executors of her vast fortune. How very convenient, right? They're like, oh, we gotta lock her up. She's lost her mind. We'll just go ahead and take care of all her money and her property for her, though. We got it over here, right? This continues. Clara's story, however, is a story of a woman demanding freedom and equality in a discriminatory and sexist society. Not only the importance of her words, documented in the files of her complaints, but also her strength and consistency in speaking out against the systemic sexist harassment to which she was subjected for a lifetime. Again, such tragedy in not only her passing, but the majority of her life, everything that she had to fight through, as did, I'm sure, many women back then. Okay, I have a couple more things before we finish up, but we're going to take a quick break. Welcome back, Will Friends. Okay, so the next source that we have here is from laciudadrevista.com, and it says The Forgotten History of Clara García de Zúñiga. And so this is, I think, a timeline of her life, and so I want to go through it so we can get more of like a clear idea. I know we've mentioned things here and there, but I want to do a clear timeline of this. This says, for many Uruguayans, Clara García de Zúñiga is the ghost who, at night, moves the paintings on display at the Blanes Museum, located in the stately El Prado neighborhood of Montevideo. However, Clara is from Entre Rios, born in Gualeguaychú, and in this brief article, we will tell you part of this legend that has become an urban myth in the eastern capital. So this says, early life. Clarita was born on April 15th, 1845, as we know, in Campos Floridos, one of her father, Mateo García de Zúñiga's ranches in Gualeguaychú, to Rosalía de Elia Alzaga. I remind you that Justo José de Urquiza was also related to the Alzagas on his mother's side. He was an Argentinian general and politician who served as president of the Argentine Confederation from 1854 to 1860. Clarita was some sort of relative to an Argentinian president. This continues, who were the García de Zúñigas? Alonso Mateo de Zúñiga, who lived from 1690 to 1760, born in Sevilla, was the one who started the family dynasty in the Rio de la Plata. They were large ranchers with properties in the Banda Oriental, Buenos Aires, and Entre Rios. In Entre Rios, the Previstero Dr. Pedro García de Zúñiga hired Joseph de Urquiza, recommended by the Alzagas, to manage the 176,000 hectares he owned. That's a lot of land. And the first Urquiza from Entre Rios was born in the La Centella settlement. Clara's father, Mateo, was the son of Esteban Justo and grandson of Alonso. He inherited his father's land of, again, all of this land, 176,000 hectares, in Gualeguaychú, and became governor of the province for a brief period of 6 months in 1827. This continues about Clarita's childhood. Clarita was happy as a child. She used to run cross-country, climb trees, and bathe in streams, enjoying a freedom that would soon be taken away from her. So yeah, she was an extremely free-spirited kid, as kids should be, just allowed to live their lives. And this says, Mateo was a recognized supporter of Don Juan Manuel de Rosas. He owned more than 200 armed peons who represented a danger to the rebel Urquiza. Colonel Dumont, who owed favors to Mateo, warned him of the possibility that Urquiza might decide to eliminate him. After Rosas' defeat, he decided to completely change his surroundings and moved with his family to Montevideo. Essentially, now we know that the reason they moved to Montevideo from Argentina was because they were in some sort of political danger. At the age of 9, Clara's life was torn away from the places where she had enjoyed complete freedom. But the girl was very restless and refused to accept the canons of the time, so she became a major problem for the conservative society of the 19th century. Honestly, she really said no justice, no peace. If I'm not happy, you're not happy. Why'd you do this to me? Then this goes on to talk about her marriage. This says, Clara's unhappy marriage led her own mother to consult with Jacinto Vera, the priest who would later be named Vicar of Montevideo and whose name refers to a neighborhood in the Uruguayan capital. A priest with a more conservative outlook in the church, he advised her mom, to place her under the protection of St. Anthony and marry her off as soon as possible. At the age of 10, Clara already had a husband designated for her, and so when she turned 14, she was forced to marry José María Zubiria, 22 years older than her. So they married her off when she was 14, but when she was 10, they had already decided who this guy was and probably made the arrangement with him already, which is That's disgusting. Oh my God. Okay, so this says she was a transgressive woman because once married, she refused to be a luxury, quote, slave who blindly obeyed her husband. So she said, listen, they gave me away to you, but I'm not going to be subservient. This isn't what you think it is. And good for her. This continues, although her divorce from her husband was finalized in 1878, she had numerous lovers, one of whom was her lawyer, Alberto Garcia Lagos. That's where I got the lawyer thing from. So yeah, one of her lovers was also her lawyer, Alberto Garcia Lagos, with whom she apparently had several children. So I think that's where the other 4 children came from. And this says that by that point, when she was with Ernesto de las Carreras and they had their son, Roberto, the writer, that she was already the owner of the summer house, which is now the Blanes Museum, right? So this says, in 1872, upon the death of her father, Clara became the sole heir and an immensely wealthy woman. But that day also marked the beginning of the ordeal that would accompany her until the end of her days. So essentially, when she inherited this property and all this money, that's when the problem started for her, right? Because of the people around her. This says her husband immediately claimed possession of his wife. So suddenly he was now like, okay, no, she's my wife again. Even though they had been separated and she was doing her own thing, who had escaped with her children and bought the Villa de las Duranas. This continues. In one of her many court statements, and as she was being reprimanded for her dissipated lifestyle, she told the judge, without flinching, that she made love, quote, however I please, and I do it because I am free, very young, and completely separated from my husband. I love that for her. This says it was an unequal fight, though, that in the end, her husband got his way. He had the church, the courts, conservative politicians, and society itself on his side. The final result was that Clara was mentally insane, according to them. They built a loft right in her home where they locked her away. Of course, the main goal was to seize her fortune, since a, quote, mad woman was incapable of managing it. Clara, however, did not die in Montevideo. Oh, okay. So this changes everything that I thought earlier. It says I forgot about this part. She didn't die in Montevideo. It says that her daughter Rosa managed to transport her to Buenos Aires, where she died on September 9th, 1896. Roberto de las Carreras, in his book Amor Libre, left some words that could be the best epitaph for Clara. Quote, no victor, be it Caesar, Napoleon, or Alexander, has been able to boast of having tied women to his chariot. Wow. So it seems like her kids loved her. So much so that they weren't going to let her just rot in this makeshift prison, right? And her son wrote lovely words about her. And the last thing that I have for you is, like I mentioned earlier, I feel like we should hear more about museums being haunted or these haunted museums. And so I was looking at haunted paintings, and I found this article on cowlingandwilcox.com, and it says stories behind the most haunted paintings. And this is just kind of a listicle. I'll be putting pictures up here in the video, but you can also find these, of course, very easy. So this first one, it's The Hands Resist Him. It's a painting, and I'll describe it to you, but the picture's up here for audio-only listeners. So it looks like there's 2 children standing in front of this maybe glass pane door. There's a little boy, and this looks like a little girl. She kind of looks like a doll. Like there's a hinge on her elbow, and her eyes are completely blacked out. But the door behind them, this like glass pane door, it's dark, but you can see hands up against it. I don't know. It's called The Hands Resist Him. It says, The Hands Resist Him is a notoriously haunted painting completed by Bill Stoneham in 1972, depicting a young boy and girl standing in front of a shop window. Though the artist had no bad intentions, the painting has been blamed for the death of a gallery owner and the first critic to ever review the painting. Okay. This is also my first time actually going through these. I just saw this listicle and I was like, I want to leave this as a surprise for myself too. So this is my honest reaction to these. It says, the painting gained a reputation and it was sold on eBay with claims that it was cursed, accompanied by a webcam video of the small boy climbing out of the painting. The little girl's hands could be seen to be holding a gun, and people claim she is forcing the boy out of the painting to cause havoc in the real world. It's also been said to cause strange things to happen when being viewed, from fainting, blackouts, children screaming, and technology malfunctioning. I swear to God, if any of this stops recording, maybe it's only like the actual painting itself. I need to see, what is this video? This video of him climbing out of the painting. Ew. I need to find that. It looks like she's holding something in this painting, also this picture of this painting, but it looks like a can or a tube or something. It doesn't look like a gun, but That's creepy. Okay. The next one is called the Stagecraft or the Hanging Man. So, oh, I see it. So it looks kind of like an old-timey wooden wagon with those big wooden wheels. And there's like a red part of the carriage. And there's like the structure for like the fabric that goes draped on top of them. You know what I'm talking about? But it's not there. But off to the side and kind of behind it, it looks like a person is hanging, but they're kind of blended into the trees. And this says, this eerie painting is an adaptation of a photograph, which was taken by commercial photographer James Kidd. The photo was taken of the wooden cart, and the figure of a headless man was only found after the picture was developed. With no evidence of it being tampered with, the artist Laura P. was drawn to the photograph, and she felt she had to paint it. Her oil painting of the photograph was hung in her house, causing inexplicable events. She claims that it has been responsible for a mysterious leak, objects being knocked over, broken items, and even mysterious knocks on doors. Laura has had many offers to buy the painting, however, fears what will happen in the homes of buyers. So interesting. So not even like the photo is the cursed thing, it's the painting of the photo for whatever reason that's causing, it's absorbed the energy. I don't know. And there's like all this paranormal activity around it. No, thank you. I won't be having any of these paintings in my house. This next one is the Crying Boy, and it's a picture of a little boy, or a painting of a little boy crying, but it's kind of like close up. So like from like his shoulders up, he's kind of looking over his shoulder, not directly like forward like Clarita's painting, but kind of like off to the side. And this says, the Crying Boy has been blamed for countless house fires. What? Bruno Amadio completed the painting as part of a series of crying orphans and published it under the name Giovanni Bragolin. That's such a strange subject matter to cover. I wonder why. Like, what was the decision behind that? It says he made many prints of the painting to sell to tourists following the Second World War. That makes sense. Following its distribution, the painting has been found untouched in many burned down homes. Okay, found untouched in many cases, a story began to develop about the boy in the painting. Very important words. It says a story began to develop. So just made up things about this painting. It says his parents allegedly died in a fire, and the orphaned boy cursed every home into which he was taken in. Despite no truth being found in this story, many people refuse to have the painting in their homes. Yeah, I'd be like, I don't care what the story is. You're telling me every house this painting has been in has burned down? Creepy. So this next one says the Dead Mother, and it looks like it's a painting of a little girl. I'm assuming a little girl. She's wearing like black boots or stockings, a little dress, and she's facing forward and she has her hands covering her ears, and behind her there's a bed, and it looks like there's a woman, like a pale woman too, laying in it, because she has color on her, but this person behind her in the bed is all pale, like white. And it kind of looks like, I'm trying to compare it to something. It's like, it looks like it was painted with like, I don't know, maybe like chalks, or it reminds me a little bit of, it kind of like gives Picasso a little bit, or I don't know. I am not an artist by any means. I don't know what I'm referencing. But if you see this, let me know if I was anywhere close. But anyway, this says the Dead Mother, Edvard Munch, the famous painter known for The Scream. Okay, yes, that's what I was trying to think of. It reminds me of that, The Scream. Interesting. I guess this like kind of hands on the head thing is apparent throughout his paintings, because The Scream is the only one I've ever seen from this person that I know of. It says, is responsible for the Dead Mother. The painting shows a young girl with her hands at the sides of her face in shock or despair, with her dying mother lying in bed behind her. Munch's childhood saw the death of his mother and two siblings to tuberculosis, which appears to be the inspiration of the painting. Many people claim that they feel uneasy around the painting, with her eyes following them, like Clarita, and the sounds of rustling bed sheets echoing near the painting. Ooh, spooky. Yeah, because this little girl is looking forward like Clarita is. But there's not a lot of detail in this, so it's kind of hard. I mean, okay, I made a mistake. I leaned in, and if you lean in really closely, you can see like two tiny pupils in this painting, which there's not a lot of detail. It's just, so it's kind of these like almost pale blue eyes with just pupils dead in the center. Creepy. I don't like that. This last one, there's not a picture here for it. Not that I see. Let me see if I can find it really quick. But this is I see it. Interesting. Oh, this is the portrait of Samantha Houston. And this says, let me see what it says here first before I start reading something else. It says, the seemingly sweet painting of a little girl has a dark story behind it. So it's just this little white girl, again, kind of Victorian, I may be wrong, but like this long white dress. She's got cute little brown shoes on, blue stockings. She's holding a bouquet of roses, and she's standing in front of curtains on a wooden floor, and she's holding a letter in the other hand. And she's kind of like chin down, but looking up at the painter almost. Like if you were the painter, but looking up above you, not directly at you. She's got shoulder length, kind of like strawberry blonde hair and like a blue sash around her waist. And she's smiling. She's got little rosy cheeks. She's a cute little girl. But this says the subject, Samantha, is said to be the 4-year-old daughter of a senator in Texas. That's why I went ooh and ah earlier. Samantha's father brought his daughter when he stayed at the Driscoll Hotel in Austin in 1887. Y'all, I promise I did not plan this. This is my first time seeing this at all. And I'm in Austin right now, and the Driscoll is right there. It says, where she unfortunately fell down the stairs when playing with her ball. Since then, her ghost is said to haunt the Driscoll, where she died. Her painting, completed by Richard King, was hung in the hotel where she died and has focused the spirit's alleged activity. A bouncing ball can often be seen in the hotel lobby. Door handles beside the painting rattle, and her expression seems to distort as guests view the painting. Guests have also reported feeling nauseous or a falling feeling around the artwork. Interesting. Wow. I love that we went through this whole list and it ended on, you guessed it, a creepy portrait of a little girl, kind of like Clarita's. But the thing is, these portraits they don't look creepy. They're just these portraits of these young women, but there are creepy stories behind them. Welcome back, Ghoul friends. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. And again, thank you for your patience 2 weeks ago when the last episode was supposed to go up. Just to run through those reminders from earlier, again, in case you missed them, this month's book club book is The Witches of El Paso by Luis Jaramillo. Again, patrons get to vote on the books that we read. Patrons also have access to the book club Discord channel, and that is for the mid and higher tiers, so you can check that out. But you do not need to be a patron or be a part of those tiers to participate in the book club. This is open to any and everybody. Just make sure that you follow on social media. That's at Susto Podcast on every platform so that you can keep up with the meeting details and updates on the book club. But again, this month we are reading The Witches of El Paso by Luis Jaramillo, and we'll meet at the end of the month. As always, if you would like to hear your own story on a Letters from the Beyond episode, you can do so by visiting the website sustopodcast.com or my link tree. That's linktr.ee/susto, and hit that submit a story, tell me a story button, and you can send in the story. You can also send in photo, video, audio recordings, anything that you think is oogie spooky, and I will put it either on an episode or on the social media pages. Also, please make sure to check out the YouTube. That's youtube.com/sustopodcast. Subscribe to the channel, like the videos, comment on them, engage with them. Let me know what you want to see on there. Like I said, I'm trying to be consistent. I've been posting videos on there, so go check those out and let me know what you think. There are ad-free versions of the videos on Patreon. And as always, you can support the show. It's easy, it's free, by leaving positive ratings and reviews, sharing the show with your ghoul friends, with your coworkers, with someone that you are talking to randomly at the mall, wherever you are. I don't know. But thank you for all of that support. Any and all support means so much to me. However, if you would like to support with your money dollars, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/sustopodcast. Check out the tiers there, see if any of them work for you, and sign up. Who knows? And this episode's patrons are Liza, Rachel, Alejandra, Luther, April, D, Josette, Sam, Mandy, Jules, Lori, Jeannie, Desiree C, Neressa, Rachel A, Azucena, Marlene, Chata, Lainey, Desiree A, Carla, Ricardo, Vanessa, Marisa, Nieves, Manormal, Iris, Mar, Flor, Selena, Nightingale, Clint, Rachel W. Thank you all so much. Your support makes me want to paint beautiful haunted portraits of each and every one of you. I will talk to you in the next episode, and until then, no te asustes. Bye.